I started my career working with my father, and I ended up with Boyd Coddington for 8 years. One of the last cars that we finished in his shop, which was in 1997, was the car that we called Eldorad.
Few relationships in hot rodding have generated more rumors, arguments, and unanswered questions than the one between Boyd Coddington and Chip Foose. One was the custom car king, who helped redefine the industry through billet wheels, award-winning roadsters, and a business empire that dominated the 1980s and 1990s. The other was the gifted young designer he recruited, mentored, and elevated to the highest levels of that empire. Together, they helped create some of the most celebrated hot rods of their era. But then, it all came tumbling down. Now, after years of speculation and rumors, we'll finally unveil the real reason Chip Foose betrayed Boyd Coddington so badly. But to make sense of it all, we must travel back in time first. How a hot rod empire found its future. Long before television turned custom car builders into household names, Boyd Coddington had already become one of the most influential figures in hot rodding. Beginning in the 1970s and accelerating through the 1980s and 1990s, the California-based builder transformed the custom car industry from a niche corner of automotive culture into a polished, high-end business. Working from Southern California, Coddington developed what enthusiasts came to call the Boyd look: sleek body lines, flawless paint, minimal ornamentation, and precision-machined billet aluminum components. His signature billet wheels became so influential that they helped redefine the appearance of modern street rods nationwide. As his reputation grew, so did his trophy collection. Boyd-built cars captured multiple America's Most Beautiful Roadster awards at the Grand National Roadster Show. At the same time, several hundred miles away, another future star was already developing an unusual talent. Chip Foose was born into hot rodding culture as the son of respected builder Sam Foose. He painted his first car at just 12 years old and quickly demonstrated a remarkable ability to visualize complete vehicle designs before they were ever built. That talent eventually led him to California's Art Center College of Design in Pasadena. The plan was simple: graduate, join a major automaker, pursue a corporate design career. But Boyd Coddington had other ideas for the young lad. He recognized that Foose possessed a rare combination of artistic vision and practical understanding of how custom cars were actually constructed. Rather than allowing that talent to disappear into Detroit's corporate design departments, Boyd recruited him into the custom car world. Foose would later recall that he had already been contributing design work for Boyd before officially joining the company full-time. What began as an occasional collaboration soon developed into a much deeper professional relationship. Inside Hot Rods by Boyd, Foose became far more than another employee. He was increasingly trusted with conceptual design work that would shape some of the company's most ambitious projects. As the years passed, the relationship evolved into something resembling a classic mentor-protege partnership. Boyd provided the platform, resources, industry connections, and reputation. Foose supplied fresh ideas, technical drawing skills, and a design language that resonated with a new generation of enthusiasts. By the mid-1990s, Foose's influence inside the organization had become impossible to ignore. Industry observers frequently associated his sketches and concepts with many of the shop's most celebrated builds. The results were impossible to miss. Behind the awards, who was really creating the cars? Hot Rods by Boyd had become one of the most recognizable brands in the hot rodding world. Magazine covers, national car shows, and major industry awards regularly featured Boyd Coddington creations. Yet, as the trophies accumulated, Chip Foose, who had entered the organization as a young designer with exceptional artistic talent, continued rising through the ranks until he eventually became president of Hot Rods by Boyd. As Foose's responsibilities expanded, so did his reputation. Within the industry, builders, fabricators, and enthusiasts increasingly recognized his distinctive design style. Foose possessed a rare ability to blend classic hot rod proportions with modern refinement, creating vehicles that looked timeless rather than tied to a particular trend. Long before television made him famous, his sketches were already circulating throughout the custom car community. Industry insiders often associated him with many of the designs emerging from Boyd's operation. While Boyd remained the public face of the company, Foose was becoming one of its most important creative forces behind the scenes. This growing recognition created an unusual dynamic. Custom cars are rarely the work of a single individual. Designers, fabricators, painters, machinists, engineers, and shop owners all contribute to the final product. Yet car enthusiasts naturally gravitate toward identifying a single creative mastermind. As a result, discussions increasingly emerged regarding who deserved credit for the stunning vehicles carrying the Boyd name. Boyd had built the business, assembled the teams, secured the clients, and established the standards. At the same time, Foose's artistic fingerprints appeared visible on many of the concepts that generated industry attention. The more successful the cars became, the more complicated the question of authorship appeared. Speculation gradually evolved into mythology. By the 2000s, internet forums had become gathering places where fans debated the origins of famous Boyd-era projects. Discussions on automotive communities, such as hot rodders and other enthusiast forums, frequently featured posters arguing that Foose had played a major role in many of Boyd's best-known creations. Some enthusiasts went even further, claiming that Foose was responsible for much of the design brilliance associated with the company during its peak years. These claims, however, reflected only personal opinions and fan perceptions. Nothing more, nothing less. The Collapse of Hot Rods by Boyd. By the late 1990s, Boyd Coddington appeared to have achieved something few custom car builders had ever managed. He was no longer simply constructing award-winning hot rods. He was building a business empire. Throughout the decade, the Southern California entrepreneur expanded beyond fabrication shops and show cars into a network of commercial ventures tied to the Boyd name. His billet wheel business had become one of the most recognizable brands in the aftermarket industry, and investors saw opportunity in transforming that success into something much larger. As hot rodding surged in popularity, Boyd's operation increasingly resembled a corporate enterprise rather than a traditional custom car shop. But rapid expansion brought risks that were not always visible from the polished magazine covers and car show trophies. Behind the scenes, Boyd's wheels became entangled in financial pressures that grew more severe as the decade progressed. Public filings and contemporary reports documented mounting debt and operational challenges. The company had expanded aggressively, yet maintaining growth proved far more difficult than achieving it. By 1998, the situation had deteriorated to the point that Boyd's wheels entered Chapter 11 bankruptcy proceedings. The crisis unfolded at the exact moment Chip Foose occupied one of the most influential positions inside the organization. Having risen through the ranks over the previous years, Foose had become president of Hot Rods by Boyd and was deeply involved in company operations. This fact would later become significant because it placed both mentor and protege at the center of one of the most dramatic business collapses in modern hot rodding history. As the bankruptcy process moved forward, uncertainty spread throughout the company. Employees faced questions about the future. Vendors and creditors sought answers. Projects that once symbolized success suddenly existed against a backdrop of financial instability. Years later, Chip Foose would recall how difficult conditions had become during the final period of his tenure. According to Foose, he had gone weeks without receiving a paycheck before ultimately deciding to leave. The decision to leave carried enormous personal risk. Loyalty, resentment, and the questions nobody fully answered. Foose was not departing with investors lined up or a major corporate contract waiting. In later interviews, he recounted that he and his wife, Lynn Foose, started Foose Design with only $700 available. For nearly a decade, he had been one of Boyd Coddington's most trusted lieutenants, rising from designer to president while helping shape some of the most recognizable custom cars of the era. His next move took him to Huntington Beach, California, where he and his wife, Lynn, established Foose Design. At the time, there was little indication that the small operation would eventually become one of the most recognizable names in custom automotive culture. Yet almost immediately, observers began noticing something that would fuel years of speculation and debate. As Foose Design grew, several individuals who had previously worked with Boyd Coddington began appearing at the new company. In the relatively small world of professional hot rodding, employee movement was hardly unusual. Skilled fabricators, designers, painters, machinists, and builders often changed shops throughout their careers. But because of the timing and because of the public profile of both men, these departures attracted attention. Supporters of Boyd Coddington often viewed the situation through the lens of loyalty. From that perspective, Boyd had given Foose his opportunity, elevated him to leadership, and helped build his reputation. Watching former Boyd employees surface at Foose Design after the collapse of Boyd's business ventures struck some observers as abandonment during the company's most difficult period. The timing made the optics impossible to ignore, particularly for enthusiasts who already viewed the relationship as one of mentor and protege. Foose supporters saw the same events very differently. They argued that employees are not assets that can be owned or transferred. Many pointed out that Boyd's financial difficulties had created uncertainty throughout the organization, and that experienced craftsmen naturally sought opportunities where they could continue working. The debate became especially visible on automotive forums. In a 2006 discussion on the Pistonheads forum, some posters accused Foose of having effectively stolen Boyd's employees. Yet other participants pushed back, arguing that employees had left voluntarily and that no one had been forced to move. The exchange captured a broader divide among enthusiasts. But then came the spotlight. Television turned a private rift into a public rivalry. For years, the tensions between Boyd Coddington and Chip Foose existed largely within the custom car industry. Builders, suppliers, employees, and longtime enthusiasts knew the history, but the average television viewer did not. That changed dramatically in the early 2000s, when reality television exploded across American cable networks. Suddenly, niche industries were being transformed into entertainment. Motorcycle builders had their shows. Pawn shops would eventually have theirs. Custom cars were next. Into that environment arrived two programs that would permanently shape public perceptions of Boyd and Foose: American Hot Rod and Overhaulin'. Premiering on the Discovery Channel in 2004, American Hot Rod placed cameras inside Boyd Coddington's California shop, turning workplace pressures into weekly television drama. Deadlines, disagreements, budget problems, employee conflicts, and demanding clients became storylines. Around the same period, Overhaulin' introduced audiences to Chip Foose in an entirely different role. Rather than focusing on conflict, the show centered on surprise vehicle transformations and emotional reveals. Viewers saw Foose sketching concepts, collaborating with builders, and interacting warmly with vehicle owners. The contrast was striking. Boyd often appeared as the demanding boss managing deadlines and difficult decisions, while Foose emerged as the approachable artist bringing dreams to life. Whether those portrayals accurately reflected reality is a more complicated question. Reality television is designed to tell stories, and stories need heroes, villains, tension, and resolution. American Hot Rod frequently emphasized workplace confrontations, while Overhaulin' highlighted creativity and teamwork. As millions of viewers tuned in, perceptions began forming. People who had never attended a car show or visited a fabrication shop suddenly felt they knew both men personally. Yet what they were seeing had already been filtered through producers, editors, camera crews, and network executives. One of the most memorable moments in automotive reality television involved Charlie Hutton, a respected fabricator and longtime Boyd associate. Hutton had worked alongside Boyd for years, and became one of the most recognizable personalities on American Hot Rod. When he eventually left Boyd's operation and joined Foose's growing enterprise, the event became television gold. The departure was presented as a major rupture, and the resulting confrontation quickly became one of the defining storylines of the series. For many viewers, it appeared to confirm that the relationship between Boyd and Foose had evolved from a private disagreement into a full-scale rivalry. The scene left a lasting impression, but years later, Chip Foose offered an important qualification. In a 2013 interview, Foose stated that the famous confrontation contained an element of script writing. The remark did not mean the underlying events were entirely fictional. Rather, it suggested that television producers had shaped, structured, or amplified real tensions for dramatic effect. That single comment caused many enthusiasts to reconsider scenes they had previously accepted as straightforward documentation of reality. Interestingly, large segments of the automotive community had already expressed skepticism. Discussions on forums such as Hot Rodders and Retro Rides during the mid to late 2000s frequently questioned how accurately American Hot Rod represented events behind the scenes. Some posters argued that reality television naturally exaggerated disagreements because conflict attracted viewers. Others believed certain confrontations appeared too neatly constructed to be entirely spontaneous, regardless of what was scripted, edited, or emphasized. The impact on public perception was undeniable. Millions of viewers increasingly viewed Boyd Coddington and Chip Foose as rivals, locked in a personal and professional feud. What enthusiasts believed, rumors, reputation, and the battle for public opinion. Sites such as Piston Heads, Hot Rodders, Retro Rides, Jalopy Journal discussions, and countless automotive message boards became gathering places where enthusiasts dissected every interview, television episode, employee departure, and business decision connected to the two men. The timing was significant. Social media had not yet fully taken over online conversation, which meant forums functioned as the primary arena for automotive debate. What began as discussions about cars increasingly evolved into arguments about loyalty, talent, credit, and betrayal. One of the most common themes involved Chip Foose's abilities as a designer. Many forum participants openly argued that Foose possessed extraordinary artistic talent. Posters frequently pointed to his hand-drawn renderings, his education at Art Center College of Design, and the success of vehicles associated with his name. Others praised his public demeanor, describing him as approachable, humble, and willing to work alongside fabricators rather than simply directing them from an office. These opinions became even more widespread after Overhaulen introduced Foose to mainstream audiences. To many viewers, he appeared to embody the image of the creative craftsman who remained closely connected to the people building the cars. Supporters of Boyd Coddington saw the story differently. They argued that Boyd had already transformed hot rodding long before Foose became a household name. It was Boyd who helped redefine the appearance of modern street rods through billet aluminum wheels, smooth bodywork, and the highly influential Boyd look. Many enthusiasts argued that without Boyd's vision, resources, and willingness to take a chance on a young designer, Foose might never have received the same opportunities. As the debates intensified, theories multiplied. One recurring belief held that Boyd resented Foose's growing fame after Overhaulen became successful. Another theory suggested that Foose had indirectly benefited from Boyd's financial collapse. A third claimed television had exaggerated the feud into a dramatic rivalry, while another proposed that disputes over creative credit and recognition caused the falling out. But you see, very few people commenting online had worked directly with Boyd or Foose. Most relied on interviews, television programs, magazine articles, and second-hand accounts. Speculation frequently filled the gaps where hard facts were unavailable. This gradually transformed the rivalry into something larger than either man. Reconciliation, death, and the legacy debate that never ended. Years of business turmoil, employee departures, television drama, and endless online speculation had created the impression of two men locked in an irreparable feud. Yet some of the most revealing information emerged only years later, after the headlines had faded. In a 2013 interview, Foose offered a perspective that contrasted sharply with the image many viewers had formed from American hot rod. According to Foose, Boyd was often misunderstood. Rather than being the perpetually angry or confrontational figure seen on television, Foose described him as naturally shy. By that point, the public narrative had largely solidified into opposing camps, with enthusiasts often portraying one man as the hero and the other as the villain. Foose's remarks complicated that picture. Instead of reinforcing old grievances, he offered a more human portrait of the mentor who had helped launch his career. The statement also suggested that television may have captured only part of Boyd's personality, leaving viewers with an incomplete understanding of the man. Foose revealed something else that surprised many observers. Despite the years of distance and the widespread belief that the relationship had ended badly, he stated that he and Boyd had returned to speaking terms before Boyd's death. The reconciliation was limited. Foose described it as having happened only just before the end. But it indicated that communication had resumed. For enthusiasts who had spent years debating the feud, the admission raised an intriguing possibility. Perhaps the two men had begun moving toward a better understanding of one another after all. Unfortunately, time was running out. During the final years of his life, Boyd Coddington faced serious health challenges. He had undergone multiple surgeries and dealt with complications related to ongoing medical issues. In early February 2008, he was admitted to a hospital in Southern California following surgery. On February 27, 2008, Boyd died at the age of 63. The news reverberated throughout the custom car industry. For many enthusiasts, it marked the end of an era. One of the most influential builders in modern hot rodding history was gone. In the aftermath of Boyd's death, Foose spoke respectfully about his former employer and mentor. Rather than revisiting old disputes, he acknowledged Boyd's enormous impact on the industry and on his own career. The tone stood in stark contrast to years of fan arguments that had portrayed the relationship as nothing but conflict. Yet those respectful comments also highlighted a painful reality. Whatever conversations the two men had begun having before Boyd's death, they never had the opportunity to fully explain their history to the public. That is why the story remains unresolved. Boyd's death effectively froze the narrative before many lingering questions could be answered. No comprehensive public reconciliation occurred. No detailed joint interview ever took place. Neither man sat down to systematically address every rumor, accusation, or misunderstanding that had accumulated over the years. And so, the central question survives. Was this a story of betrayal? Was it the collapse of a business relationship that gradually destroyed a friendship? Was it a dispute over loyalty, recognition, and creative credit? Or was it a relatively ordinary falling out that television and internet speculation transformed into something much larger? The evidence allows room for multiple interpretations, but it also establishes some important boundaries. Despite decades of rumors, there remains no documented evidence that Chip Foose sabotaged Boyd Coddington's business, stole his company, or committed wrongdoing against him. The idea of betrayal is merely a matter of opinion. It all depends on which side of the fence you're sitting. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.